get us paper, right? Yeah. Okay. You got to figure out some illicit methods.
Yeah, go do something. Do you need paper? I have paper.
Probably for elims, but I would have to come find you.
I got notebook paper.
Well, chances are I'm going to be judging you.
Yeah. So I can come find you.
There's a good solid chance of that. This Ivy is nothing if she is not critical.
Yeah, and then Jordan went over across too, so.
No, that didn't help much. Alright, so let's start round. Let me see. We got one AC from Better Sam. Sam 2.0.
Improved.
Is Church gonna watch this? Better Sam.
Okay, does everyone have the one I see?
Yeah, we're good.
Awesome.
Oh my god, did you put me on the chain?
No, I did not. I'm sorry.
Fail.
What is neighbors on the
Are you an interested observer? Is that?
I am. Did those emails get on the chain?
One of them did not work.
Oh, it's not mine.
Does that say Minnesota State? Go Minnesota State?
Yeah, because for some reason my Gmail is not working on this Wi-Fi. Like it just won't open.
Do you go to Minnesota State? Where is Minnesota State?
It's in Minnesota.
Thanks. It's a pretty big place. What city?
Well, I go to a college that is under the Minnesota State, so their college is like all over.
I'm a college hockey fan. I know everything in Minnesota. We're in
I go
Minnesota.
to Ember Hills.
Okay.
Which is yeah.
Okay, when I see
We're
the
good?
sent, we should be good now.
Fire it up.
Anyone not ready? Plan the United States federal government to substantially increase security cooperation with Northern Treaty Organization, increasing early warning and indication system in the area of cybersecurity. Advantage 1, when contingent 1 is attacks, current cyber attacks that defend the reactive, only reactive, the proactive attacks under the framework, and the U.S. can prevent attacks, leading to all 19. In the light of technical organization, face challenges to mitigate cyber attacks, approach to the reactive, proactive, and advanced governments of desire to enrich it by designing a forward-looking practical approach to the broad INW approach, and then hindered by lack of evidence, cyber INW, classified nature of fields and constantly changing threats. NATO can defend the U.S. under the INW appropriate methodological INW approach with the due to the broad influence of the U.S. and NATO and allied nations, and Russia's vamping up cyber capabilities will target the grid, although in 2022. It will be misleading and enemy spread and trying to lose vigilance to Russia hack tolerance. U.S. to keep guard on the side of security areas or not, then the military activity of the U.S. or to continue advancing a cyber dispute decisions and cyber attack on U.S. critical infrastructure and instantly damage like to the new common expectedly serious from the lateral in the West or Russia and the fewer incentives, and it's vulnerable now here in 21. Grid cyber systems include digital control machinery because advantages in power grids has susceptible cyber attacks and when they not power grid networks and cyber vulnerability networks also rise over into discovery and unsecure networks and distinct risk of electricity and signature does not solve risk cascade. Cur 21. Cascading impacts inevitable unexpected catastrophic implementation the constantly failed infrastructure and multiple cascading teams and power grids are one components into the fails are transferred in the elements of the on-drain that causing them to become overwhelmed, the surge of the trigger malfunction, the initial overload the whole device down and since the whole system disconnect and broader grid will fail that causes war. Williams and Bennett 16. If cyber attack happens, major active war arms are to fall, attacker grid limited attack and adversary active war is fought to provide the notable cascade to the resistant program differently carry out their cyber attack and not as well and on the next and social collapse. Freeman 16. Civilization not exist without electricity within dates blackout and encompass panel communication. Cities that have no water exhaust food hospitals do not operate blackout and non-preparedness no zone collapse but INW solves Cur 21. First step to understanding how possible to predict cyber activities is impossible to achieve reasonably good prediction the forecasting window and the results in the cyber forecasting different characteristics of the section within the defense to the NATO agency disconnect from the lines and agency strategy reactive approach IW framework and gain the warning effectivity so that they occur and INW is crucial. 1 for info sharing is key to allied defenses album and not 19. INW should establish reliable data sources of data source intelligence and the development mind in the public affairs and info to very effective for right orderly warning machine learning and increase the negative discourse in cybersecurity relevancy. It's predicting initial attack to the they have occurred 2017. Want to cry the machine learning and prevent. Want to cry from infecting NATO should then use the smart defense and change of INW to best practices critical efforts to increase the ability to defend itself. NATO can support the other needed members developing and improving integrating INW capacity so to improve situation in the wars and issues of trust and more defense for ability to overcome NATO spearhead the construction the trust and the info sharing and the data cross and enhance the situational awareness of better identify targets and share the networks. And 2 innovation and throws modern security mirrors in 2019. Importance of cybercom considering its temporal limit, partial limit, the support, defense, and NATO and its technological advantage, the function, the application, the simply pursued. U.S. citizen innovation ecosystem building, collaborative process, transferring positive innovation towards a connecting organization be essential. U.S. needed the new opportunity to fight, but then understood in the orchestrated strategy framework more than often not than a lot. Their lights first and the risk of first control. And 3, retribution, even if INW fails to prevent future attacks and spillover with the vocabulary of 17. INW defends against attacks requiring understanding of adversary capabilities. INW analyzes intelligence and assesses probability of hostile actions. The crucial element is capability of recognizing and the INW support through monitoring and detection and analyzing alerts down to the critical role in determining under attack and determining the identity of attacker through analysis and vendors to discover attacks and unknown vulnerability, support mitigation, prevent future attacks, and help achieve the deterrence and resilience of fear retribution. Otherwise, the groups get away with hacks. Chain 22. Industrial controls an easy target attacker that design without an afterthought of the result of demanding cascading effect and not disrupt natural defense in the capacity, non state and non-security, criminal organization, terror attack, they have an attack to shut down grid or utilities malware, the effect of the use of system of hacker that appear to be from the active against their resource of the tree attribution challenging the big Russia's non-state and then attempting to make it look like rather than something different. The attack is associated with destruction that exerted the fields. While finance could be living in the U.S. as several countries in the ICS malware is contention 2 is miscalculation, NATO's aging nuclear command and control and communication in C3 system. The risk is and then greatly increases risk for nuclear escalation, also in L 20. Growing cyber attacks is difficult to ensure cyber security countries the neglect vulnerability to the nuclear convention and intertwined during the C3 and the mean for NATO combating multiple actors and state and simultaneously not action the same capabilities on NATO capability provided by allies not much in NATO C3 system and NATO cyber security. What happens in approaches could be susceptible to nuclear deterrence and flux due to cyber vulnerability, digital offense, cyber security challenge, and extinction. Claire 19. Malware in C3 system increasing for the rest of the next escalation. They do not trust in filter deleting, then will react and launch out of fear. Uncertainty undermines strategic stability, nuclear weapons, and cyber attacks, and effective INW solves and the causes de-escalation. Now, but in Alt 19. Kits are developing effective INW, provide them some warning message activity, provide them with the warning. It's worth it, got a clear guide to the investigation, then in the competence of de-escalation. NATO made important advances in the novel stop, and then other often in the mind-enabling capabilities and different in the short-term cyber is rapidly evolving. NATO needs to catch up with them and anticipate intentions to dispute their activities and in the time capacities, and Russia will attack in C3's Y22. Amid the threat of nuclear threats and the potential escalation, the Russian cyber enabled the nuclear event. A cyber code and undermine the deterrence and infecting and C3 there's an escalation. The current crisis in C3 is a weak and widespread and second strike of the event functioned effectively in nuclear war. Either side may believe it's C3 is being targeted to the foreign hostile cyber operation, then a conflicting logic is the cyber is the warfare and the risk against and weak and the risk and then dependent on intelligence communicates a game of nuclear chicken. The Russian logistical failure, the future concern, the cyber then against to produce cyber prompted nuclear escalation. Russian leadership in the Western intention to cyber events all involving in C3 and data security is necessary to ensure accuracy and efficiency of L 20. Unauthorized access to data present opportunities of sophistication that in C3 system and malicious actors steal data using sophisticated means and then opportunity gathering critical information to manipulate, target, and exploit the nuclear systems. Reverse engineering system with cause of wider disruption and synchronizing NATO and national security is crucial of L 20. NATO link commerce under the coordinating and synchronizing NATO and cooperative forces, the planning cooperation and into capacity, C2 the capacity that NATO's independent capacity capable and interoperable nation system and implies a need for technical harmonization and analysis and international systems that allow effective interoperability while ensuring the key is certainly in C3 systems and extinction. Column 17. Nuclear warfare in the U.S. and Russia and the aftermath would be that send massive smoke into the atmosphere. Nuclear winter could global temperatures impossible to grow food and the threat of extinction would be great only possible with U.S. and Russia and a small war and unlikely to lead to extinction. The risk and the cost will be greater for Russia and on solvency. First, the plan solved at all 20. Cyber resilience in C3 system to public perception unfavorable, no margin for NATO allies that able to share info networks that isolate, rarely isolate throughout their life cycle. The regulation alone insufficient application of emerging tech to be useful play and purchase in detecting and mitigating vulnerability in critical systems, and INW prevents the worst impacts. Crew 21. First step in understanding how it's possible to predict cyber security and something that achieve a reasonably good prediction over the forecast of the wind of the results and cyber and the forecasting different the characteristics of detection, the advanced the side NATO agency to disconnect and intelligence, use strategy reactive, research of the proposed INW framework and making warming that effectively defect through they occur, and US leadership is key. Albin et al. 19. Despite progress, INW still immature. NATO can adapt to the established framework of the U.S. intelligence are developing since World War II that avoid surprise attacks and the INSA steps are too broad, adapted NATO connected and NATO allies applied standardizing protocols, identify and maintain the list of threats, contact scenarios, decompose and indicators, establish data collection, establish standard procedure steps and evolve into the cyber INW framework and the nuclear threat rep solved in the solve war appendix 17. Awareness on limits, good control over nuclear weapons is crucial for nuclear learning, critical policy debate, and the public competence shown the cause of increased danger that in the narrow experience of crisis, not based on fear of fuel overconfidence of safety, nuclear crisis, social science, and not limited to cast in the lightness of the grave, and of the future expectation, and their love and the reconceptualization and nuclear controllability would involve the question of how close do we come to nuclear disaster as a starting point in the pathways towards disaster, critical histories, nuclear close calls. Market close calls. I'm good for costs.
First question, just solvency. How does the app implement cyber resilience?
We think that through the U.S. implementing these terms and pushing it towards NATO, increasing interoperability, data sharing, it would...
Like, what is that, like, how does that happen? How does the increase in interoperability happen?
Sure. And one of the ways this happened, it looks like data sharing, the U.S. shares information.
What is the
NATO...
information?
What?
What information does the U.S. share?
Applicable information. It's talking the Alvin card as well as, the Alphina card talks about how individually states have different systems. So even if there's some improvement in some systems, it doesn't matter when ultimately...
So the app would... So what card says that states would be willing to forego their existing systems in favor of the app's proposed framework?
The existing systems have inherent vulnerabilities. We're not telling states, destroy your systems. We're saying, here are the standards we think you should implement to have safer and more reliable...
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Cybers.
The second advantage, so why has Russia not attacked NC2 systems yet?
We think that there's growing capacity and intent. We think Ukraine proves that. Russia's more aggressive. It's got nothing to lose in a sense. They're posturing towards US. I think the white card outlines this pretty well. It says that they have capabilities. There's potential escalation now.
It says they've had these capabilities for a while. They've had, Cyberforce have existed. Russian leadership
Sure.
has
The white card also says, amid these rising nuclear tensions, there's potential escalation. I think it's pretty clear the scenario it outlines.
How does the cyber, how does the U.S., know who to retaliate against if, how does the U.S. attribute attacks?
Sure. Well, that's the plan. Under the first advantage, the Albin card is really good on this. It also outlines 3 ways. First, info sharing, innovation, retribution. We think that info sharing is the most fundamental kind of part of this process from the starting point. Open source intelligence.
Well, no, but these cards all talk about deterring an attack. How does the U.S. Your scenario for retaliation is premised off of the U.S. knowing who attacked them. How does
Sure.
Does that happen?
The AF increases the ability to attribute attacks. That's the Albin 19 card. It talks about INW by increasing...
No, I get that, but I'm saying, why does the U.S. retaliate to a cyber attack now if they don't know who committed it, if they can't attribute it?
Sure, that's the AF. Inherency, there is vulnerability now because we don't know who does the attacks.
Why would that
we
not
think
control
through
escalation?
increased
Why would that not halt escalation?
Because the argument is that this results in miscalculation because the U.S. is unsure on who cyber attacked us, so we just guess who we think our most likely adversaries are.
We just launch a nuke at, but we don't know who.
Well, not a nuke, but our evidence indicates it'd be tit for tat escalation. So if we think that Russia's the first one to attack us, we would attack them back, and that would just escalate further because Russia would also respond.
That's the Williams and Bennett card.
Okay, I'm sending that's 8 and advantage
8 and advantage 1.
advantage 2. Please.
What is Sam this weekend? He's too good.
He's at a music concert.
ACL? He's at a music concert.
He's at a music concert.
Performing or watching?
Oh, just watching.
Watching.
His voice is dead.
Look at his dedication to debate.
Wow.
That's number 1 on the game board right
Should adopt your skater points for that.
there. Yeah.
Something for Sam.
Is anyone not good? Alright, cool. First off, the EU counterplan, the European Union should increase the security cooperation with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization by increasing early warning indications in the area of cybersecurity, opening the project. The United States participation. The counterplan also revitalizing EU leadership. So to see 19 tech says expanded transport European studies and competition in addition to unexpected collaboration and habits of low price and security of flexibility and external security goal is European leadership role in this future technology to bring the base of European competitiveness. The US is what the EU is poised to tackle most major mutation technologies like cyber and AI. EU strength solves global conflict, transnational threats, extension buffer. 19 U.S. Union guys said the multi-level permanent also to push back national military officers, not delusion, better opportunity for autonomy, facing increasing hostile environment, but brings the best. Human rights and rule of law, China, but to push back attacks on international windows, not priority U.S. Europe should leverage assets and coercion, climate conflict, mediation, open trade, and as the Europe can work towards the road needs to think about global sustainability. Next off is the Article 5, topical optimize, alter Article 5, the plan does not figure 22 into security building on Article 5 attack 1 of the technical manager, religious, vote neg for limits and crime fencing. The topic changing Article 5 ensures a stable mechanism of the alternatives, a delusion of unpredictable firmness, which shocked a few countries, which it estimates clash and fairness. Next off, yes, he substance interpretation, substantial security cooperation means all activities in the area, the 82 in the area means all activities in the area. Violation, the app does not cooperate over the entire area of cybersecurity for allowing the app to cooperate over minuscule parts of each of the 3 topic areas. Exponentially multiplies the number of topical apps and makes quality net ground impossible because the app is indistinct from the status quo. Next off is the security key. The one sees affirmation validate project obscures the legacy and the source scalable. 19. NATO history, special psychological warfare, mission, and policy, make silent, false, officer, disorder, real insecurity, of some regulation, ensures overall NATO and project interventions, Austin, recent was the third Soviet aggression, the link of expansion and military engagement, like minute launch evidence, and Iraq and military, regulation, uncovered, Afghanistan inside, security cooperation, of heads of war, command structure, moguls willing to wish wars, their short countries, people to achieve dominance, alternatives, reject the 1 knowledge production beyond 20 double alternatives, and colonial endeavor, and more order to get most of new protections, right by nationals, globalization of some issue, the position of universal validity to colonial needs, so epicenter, disobedience, or using contrasting of a distinction between 30 and practice the belief in argument point of view created takes into account the colonial person and other neutral disorder and modernity presenting subject to resolve episodic category modernity person was domination as legitimate the thinkers refuse and dialect made rational. Next up is a Croatian text the United States government to substantiate increased security question with Albania, Belgium, Bulgaria, Canada, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Montenegro, the Netherlands, North Macedonia, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Turkey, United Kingdom in the early warning and indication system, security, cooperation with Croatia, legitimize interference in Bosnia, so Ujalik, Russia, in the Bosnia, but the Croatian constitution, decrease protection, Croatian people, other states, New Russia, politically, as intensified, and method, navigation, no sovereignty, Bosnia, Croatia, pursuing expedition over Bosnia, the guys of NATO, and likely, especially in absent of community strategy, that causes Bosnian, Croatian, separatist war by ICG, 22, Bosnia, and Croatia to form a united Croatia, Dominican, be utterly only straight on well, separatist, separatist, relation of the national limit, and because any hope the Croatian, Bosnia, for union, for any separatist, the Croatian leaders, take out the option, the first option to open and organized people for election and showing this week the country of hard Balkan secession now outweighs nuclear war, gridlocks and spills over to South Asia for civil wars of nationalism, Balkan because of the loss of light ratio, car city, economic sufficiency, training, power relation, NATO, signals and nuclear war, South Asia, bar manipulation, international system, no direct country, we international activities, fundamental problem. Next up is the DSC short after the DSC is dedicating resources for FMS now is the Nasu DD for administration land FMS and simple brass and side of a subject DSC the use of the world's largest arms exported to get a China, Russia, needs to be a fresh and streamlined possible once automated streams. Keep the in relation to hospital region. The plan requires resource hopper. 90 days to made by Congress to also direction with large number of limits on members in the convoluted short process institution of here in the US and SC. It's a policy tool, not a tool for anything that trades jobs occur. 5 security cooperation limited resources, not just money, but time and policy action requires that focus is not possible to assist. Part is what every capable prioritization is central to a unified position considering the focus of gravity to construct the applying resources efficient FMS solves great power war hobbing. So the United States and challenge US and influence in Russia. Around the SC Atlantic Commission, Brazilian SC programs and arms trade of defense sector use and defense supports and international getting readiness, collaboration, and synergy, government ownership, FM support, customer, US capacity, military primacy stops every threat brands. 18 America committed to privacy in every document, maintain list of Russia, Asian Middle East, and background strategy, purpose, need to blow out the separate state, and terrorism in Washington, preserve and master versus challenge and system, north of hard power, powers of the hydrogen deployment modernization, and nuclear and conventional social forces, run develop A2D. Next up is the DSC pick text. United States government should substantially increase coordination with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization by increasing all of the one indication system and area cybersecurity, specifically the U.S. Cyber Command proposed a multilateral agreement not to target infrastructure and nuclear command and control system of cyber attacks. Resolution says security cooperation means it can be over. Actually, I read this above. Across apply that Cybercom solves the F-1AC Mars minority. 1981, but Cybercom is considered such for defense. Actually, U.S. Cyber should look at defense on innovation and I think somebody force a lot of policy to achieve it. Everyone says yes to the global rule or gets started getting critical infrastructure that solves it right now. So there's already also many direction when you do assumption of infrastructure. said to try to assist and opportunities and brotherhood and pass all their protection to 2010 GDD for 30 American dialogue. North Secretary State Matters, personally to any infrastructure, you made an implement targets such as what agrees with supplies and financial. Next off is the Turkey decided enhanced security cooperation triggers aggression officer. 20 Turkeys, 11 is to ask on the concession needed from either simply outside of Turkey, but using the leniency to try to win interest. Usually just a Islam obligation to those opposite American issues. Just observing allies like Turkey, they claim on the pattern emboldening Turkey triggers Greece trigger war guys. 22. Turkey pressured Asian party government aggression to go ahead and push them strongly against agreed boundaries. Prominent voice of New York State Asian parties are going to U.S. at war between Greece and Turkey is probable goes nuclear pornos. 18 Asian hostile wars constituted trading weapons meant to power all the rest of the European officers and main intentions. Turkey violated Greece at airspace unity theater to confederation due for the maintained CNC because intensity resembling a nuclear war. Because there's so much high-tech ordnance destroyed by cause damage, worry on national escalation. U.S. intervene. Immediate textbook case of calculus escalation. New on to war condition more conducive to war because instability. Advantage 1. There's no cyber impact. Lewis. 20. Not state action, but state lack of cause of evasion. Let's look at our on the ability distributed on the ability to result retaliation when it died. From side of LASA to put their nucleus on and have no insurance catastrophic attack when it purpose equal retaliation and escalation of recurrent conscious limit result of now since there's cultural for benefits and the Russia China as similar to US and Iran when we do so an armed colony recruit has no capabilities. Taxes of the solar wind storms grid impact the grid's resilient and cluster. 18 grid is not about to go to 100% capabilities. The grid is within the segment of trafficking networks are not caused by like us. Instead of one side would cause a hypothetical opposite and networks are not caused actually not networks are not caused by like instead on one side would require Taylor choose an opposite and would not scalable guys on possible scale is unlikely. LSA no Cooper. 21 security cooperation about the trust in the activity, but about 38 experts that's one of the allies you would get in on the to trust in the United States. When it comes to security cooperation, now allies are restarting relation with US and India. Taking advice on the recommendation from future campaigns, allies had to collaborate on future security cooperation, specifically Turkey and Hungary spoil Basu. 22 other ones that hostage taking influence and sit down and when you don't find it, everyone do whatever he wants. I'll just send him given a role of Turkey playing something press and not in the state of Barabs and Christ in Hungary spoil. Use it a veto to prevent banning or neutralizing no decision. Consensus requirement frames to its answers. Boston. 18. NATO's regional organization, although to pass on less than no world council or adoption, or military friction, line disruption, non-irrelevant institution war, procedure, present alliance for delayed common action, and NATO means that there's opportunity not going to be faster in the countries that make it up, opposition, difficult, large, allies, diversion, interest, and compromise between cohesion and effectiveness. Advantage 2, there's no chance of US-Russia war. Promise 18. Third of competition between Russia and NATO is wrong about because there's a chance of balance disabled under escalation hardly they're likely a competition between the weakest neither. Russia points to heightened balance. Another local purpose and present the arsenal colder LA fears have minimum arsenal some minimum from side of the US president decreased on his own hardware considered by passing the NATO purposes. At least under cash with heightened delivery calls are large ammunition hardly expensive. It won't escalate zipper. 18 each time of opportunity to make a nuclear Sunday assembly how about it is opening shoulder comes on engineer pops and related both repeatedly when the millions hang on the balance and not rationally cold hard to use and different rationality. T get something. There's no NC3 impact longer. 22 conducting operations against a nuclear state of conversion with some extended progress. So the access of the state conduct operation of doing state secret mitigation installation cause of response would have to declare operation of a safe and window opportunity likelihood of the circumstances arises low. Several weapons are rarely cause destruction. So cascades are impossible. This is not first advantage. Marcia 16 there's super goods in the United States and West End Texas. You can take an election from Louisiana until you can't go and use no standing for state grid operation over the state of Florida cascading affiliates with guys. New York City you go to other lines of operations maintaining no single fatality state cascading failure to have necessary change include reserve generation by turning off power. Cyber attacks won't take actually that's fine. I'll set up that card. 2 seconds. Next time.
The last one was just an advantage 2, right?
Yeah, advantage 1.
Advantage 1.
Yeah. Wherever the grid impact was.
Sorry, I'm just playing with that.
Yeah, I said in the body.
You can start.
Okay.
Yeah.
First, T subsets. What are topical AFs?
AF set affect all activities in the area.
All activities in the area, like what does that look like?
You could read a cyber AF that does improves cybersecurity all across the board in NATO. So for example, you could harden all of JATO, which is the Joint Action Operations Committee in NATO. You could harden the cyber capabilities of that because they oversee all of NATO's operations.
All INW systems. Why is that not topical?
Because it doesn't implicate every NATO system. We made an argument about why cooperation has to be throughout the area of cybersecurity. So every construct that uses cyber technologies in NATO.
Okay, that's fine. Croatia pick. Does the CP use NATO framework?
T?
What do you mean by the NATO framework?
Does the CP work through NATO or is it?
No, it doesn't work through NATO as an institution, but it works with basically every ally in NATO since
Okay,
Croatia.
by that. Status of off.
Status quo is always an option.
And can you kick flanks?
T?
Let's see. Sure.
Okay, that's fine. On security K.
Yep.
What does how do you evaluate threats?
Our argument is rather more complex than that. Biondi says that even if threats could be incoming, our argument is about how the alternative restructures or approach them. So, for example, when the 1AC, like the white evidence says that, Russia, or like, NC3 attacks are going to happen, the bottom of the card says that Russia perceives Western involvement in Ukraine and other prospects like that. We think that we need to take an approach that analyzes the causes to which Russia, why they would NC3 attack those things. The AF's causal relationship between, we do this one policy and solve that is wrong.
Can the K ever solve the AF?
We'll make arguments about why it solves the AF, sure.
Why it solves the AF?
Yeah.
So it can result the same situation.
We think it would result in something like the AF, but not exactly.
Okay, that's fine. DSEA trade-off, your link is that security cooperation trades off. Are there any specific warrants about why the app reallocates resources? What resources are being reallocated?
We think that we'll make a couple links in the block about why reorienting all of our NC3 systems would probably take a lot of resources because we have to.
Okay,
What? Yeah.
That's fine. On Turkey, why does Ukraine not thump? The evidence is pre-Ukraine. It doesn't assume increased need of cooperation.
We'll make arguments about why the AF, the AF make it so that Turkey becomes emboldened within certain conflicts because of their ability to, seek early warning, seek indication systems, so they can.
On the same thread, no U.S.-Russia war is from 2018. It's talking about deterrence of war in general. Why does this still apply?
I don't get why 2018 matters. We made it. The
Because
Kupchon evidence is
Ukraine
very
has
specific to
happened
why.
in the interim.
The Kupchon evidence is very specific to why, since the Cold War, Russia and the U.S. have not been hostile to each other. Both sides don't seek escalation, and that the likelihood of confrontation remains low because we have minimal arsenals. We've engaged in arms control, etc.
Okay, so listen up. The orders, attacks, miscalc, T Article 5, T subsets.
Hold on, sorry.
Yeah. A lot off.
I'm just waiting for your email to show up.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, my bad. Alright. Case, advantage 1, advantage 2.
Yep.
Sorry, that would be attack, miscalc.
Mm-hmm.
And then T, Article 5, T subsets?
Yep.
Okay.
And then, do you want after that too?
Yes, please.
Okay. The DSEA pick,
DSCA pick, yep.
the EU counterplan,
You kind of plan, yep.
the the Croatia pick,
Croatia pick, yep.
the security K,
Security K,
DSEA trade-off.
Turkey K.
Yeah.
I guess that was port 4. In case you were going to drop it.
Hold on, Alex. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. Let me know when you're good. I'm gonna get water. Okay. Am I good? Lack of cyber defense makes attacks inevitable. The greater trust in extras from civilizational comes on tip for escalation, which goes nuclear 1 Yes, cyber impact tip for escalation due to no cost calculation in terms of rising level of nuclear use because sites don't know each other's intentions. That's clear 2 attacks as a result of natural weather, not the same as an adversarial attack. 3 career calls extinction. War. It's an active war cause escalation. That's William. 2nd, societal collapse, loss of communication, food, water, etc. All interest. Society collapse. That's 3. 4. No segmenting chain of components. Ensure attacks go over, which overcome segmenting due to low transference. That's cure. 5. Allies say yes. 8. Info sharing out of some crucial information to secure systems. Athena. 2nd, frameworks use 1 and ensures the cooperation because allies want to brand infrastructure. All but U.S. leadership solves ARS. 18. U.S. is largely NATO capability critical and international operation. U.S. is related to how depend on the U.S. policy. Without transparency could limit effectiveness. They said Turkey spoils don't need consistent advantage 1, but absolves Brzezinski. 22. Finland, Sweden becomes members of NATO. Consensus facilitated by Biden and Erdogan. Underscoring close to the U.S. where Erdogan have a vitality to veto to show loyalty to European pressure. They don't start condition. NATO brings Turkey far more value than Russia unity in the face of Russia plans relation form of transactional transition. Swindon proves that yes, there's no impact to Hungary. No consensus proves that coercion makes us assault, but we don't need to meet every NATO requirement. It has to be consensus. The last our card was answered above. Advantage 2. NATO's NC3 systems are vulnerable, which makes this inevitable due to nuclear due to unclear intentional false information. Independently, Russian attacks makes nuclear use inevitable causes. Extinction 1 Yes, Russia war miscalculation due to fog of war, unclear tension in cyber realm, and ensures escalation because both sides are afraid of other tensions after Brzezinski. The Xener card does not assume miscalc 1C3. NC3 is not declaring malware. EU security systems upgrading all second ensures ample opportunities for adversaries to gain access to the network and data openings. That's Claire and Athena. T1 We meet plan text in a vacuum is only an opportunity standards that can encounter NATO as an alliance of countries. Where its activities is in a consultation operation and mission partnerships develop the means to respond to that. That's the Weaver 21 preferred. A is precision. addition, their evidence does not say NATO is only Article 5. They arbitrarily assign it as the only flag function, and others disprove it superior to them. So there's countertip, just RF is topical. Second, over limiting double bind either A, only 3 topical apps, one for each area, or B, every app meets because they solve through Article 5. Third, functional limits, trade-off to assess NATO bad, the EU kind of plan, etc. All prove the topic is terrible. Fourth, reasonability, good is good, and especially on the NATO topic, where no experts agree on the meaning behind any word. Competing in terms cause a race to the bottom end. Arbitrary cherry picking. T subsets. 1, we meet the AFTA security cooperation, all of cybersecurity meeting. IW standards, double bind either RFT or there are only 3 topical apps, no distinction between their cases from cross-act. Second, counter substantial security cooperation, 1 or more of the areas means 1 or more of the areas. In means within, not throughout, colon 52, and obviously the word in does not mean throughout, nor where the authority refers to covering the meaning, such as the word in. Third, counter or means any of the 3 are fine or more. Scalia 12, A, B, C, distinct to one of the 3 is required anymore. That satisfies. So fourth, prefer it. 8, over limiting barely anyone is writing in the context of emerging tech, NATO, and the U.S. security operation, finding us to meet all 3 areas is impossible burden that falls into big. Second, precision. Our definition uses plain meaning, which is the most predictable, and what is cited in court decisions. 5, functional limits cross-apply from above. 6, reasonability also cross-apply. DSEA. 1, perm to the counterplan. Counterplans will see functionally and textually competitive, avoids infinite normal means picks, and is a reasonable standard of competition that ensures Afghan and German net benefits. Any other inter kills research and fairness. Second, Asian counterplans are bad and voted. They shifted away from the desirability of the plan to different ways to be implemented, which is bad for fairness education since it seals the AF. Third, perm to those shields to link the rest of that. While beyond the DSA, DISAT, DSA programs work with NATO countries, mean shared security objectives. DSA. Note that DSA multi-year ICB office of the Estonia focused on illegal permit to have come from land active multi-domain gray zones. Efforts that align with NATO protocols. ICB engagements, mean shared security objectives. ICB for the need for your common understanding of conducting cooperation among other NATO allies. And DSA coordinates cybersecurity policies. It's key. DSA. No day I'm on outline DSA working towards integrating IC systems and info sharing to fly with strategic policy guidance directs and coordinate cybersecurity programs to establish cyber procedures and policy. EU. 1, perm to both shields and links. Second, perm to the kind of plan. No internal net benefit. Perm to the plan of how the EU do something. I inserted the text. Fourth, multi-international fiat is a voter 190. Factorial countries makes engagement impossible, and it's not real world. Though policymakers can control 2, destroys class education and fairness against single countries, which solves. 5, cancel of advantage 1. A grid. Russia is putting U.S. infrastructure at risk. The kind of plan ignores us. Aldo Nova. Second, innovation. U.S. cybercom is crucial to fostering innovation that solves more threats than the AFTA mirrors. Third is framework. The U.S. framework has established and tested the data as spices. It's album. 6, cancel of advantage 2. 1 and through NC3. NATO systems are vulnerable. There's a difference between ally and alliance tech. The latter side risk and integration is key. That's Athena. Second, centralization, ignoring NATO systems fails as Athena. At all 20 NATO ensure agility. There's a need for security through all hallways, decentralization, effective the network granted by biodiversity, transmission delayed, intercepted, and success hampered decisions. Require resilience, attack against essential support the widest ecosystem of C2 assets, attacks on NATO cost escalation, Athena. At all 20 NATO relies and TDL for infinite time, critical for EINW, planning awareness, all C2 intrusion may have a high impact, no internal net benefit, no spillover, no reason a single EU policy is sufficient to result and broad leadership. Second, no terminal impact, make them established on the Croatia pick. A, perm do both shields and link looks like conditional exclusion. Second, perm do the counterplan cross apply. The competition debate from above. The is an all or nothing who revert to ridiculous US district court for Eastern District of Wisconsin 22 use the all or nothing court disagrees with the denoting 1 or 2, the 1 or more. The also has a dinner card make 2 dishes to make the food does not mean all, it's just requires 1 or more items. Third, perm do the plan with specifically those countries that answer to the text. Fourth, can't solve a NATO-wide framework is key, not including some allies does not give the allies a full picture, makes deterrence in INW impossible as album. Second, NC3 NATO systems are vulnerable. There's a difference between ally and alliance tech. The risk of ladders, that risk of integration is key. That's Athena. They can't kick a country out. That's Cook 22. And NATO's founding fathers did not initiate procedure revoking membership. Turkey to rise as one from being the squeaky wheel, and it's inevitable, which means no impact. Less 28. Plus, the 10 for a second Klaus Berger as ruling the court issues ultimatum so some most political easy to miss this empty threat. However, this is the broader strategic progress that external scaffolding supported the Bosnian state at all but collapse. And conditionality is bad in voting issue. 8, argument innovation fallback option allows surface level research. Second, clash that only go for the least cover flow. Third, Stratsky no research incentive due to no cost kissing counter trip display they can make perms or theories security. 1, framework where the hypothetical implementation of the AFRS has unique consequences and effects is the only protocol safe support the prerequisite of fairness and clash. Anything else moves aimless in the 1 C resource. The debate in the 1 and C. Second, extinction outweighs its irreversible precludes future improvements. The only objective metric to weigh impacts through any other metric that is tautological and devolves into genocide. Third, perm do both either the Yelth where comes to links or fails inevitably. Fourth, perm do the line through the lens of the Yelth. 5, securitization does not cause warp also. 5, threats do not depend on language that has to human life. Problems are how language construct reality is useful nor credible to hold. What I say will not change the threats are institutional some are communities regardless of language external developments affect. Securitization. 6, they have to disprove they have to win a link. Any logic is circular since the verifiability of the apps internally proves their thesis. 7, realism is true. That's post 22. Realism pursuing national interest. Trump's higher ideals takes you to survive and retain influence, not throw out a baby with the bathwater. Realism, analytical thought, school of thought, and policy neither go to Babylon prescription or unsettled retains value through what channels can understand the action of safety nature, like a world environment, and internal and external policy and policy so pursue security rather than strict with the coherent theory. Realism is defined by what it seems impossible to say. Out of fear will seek to dominate futility of arms control and disarmament treaty. 7, the alt 8 can't solve the effort checks use action which is crucial to solve NATO. Second, can't spill out debates at games. Everyone's speech plans and win-loss proves competition over determines content. Third, political picks are voted for fairness education, makes the F into a movement, makes the neg into a moving target, encourages a race to the most vague alternative. 4, the private mindset international field, so voter fairness education debating the goals of the alt instead of its mechanism is bad. DSEA. One, thesis of the dissent does not make sense. Something cannot be both profitable and risk of trading off. Second, no link a fiat's normal means may include necessary funds for implementation or trades off from a different area of the DoD. Second, cheap internal links do not require new infrastructure, new building new tech. It just utilize existing tech. And NATO solves all in all 19 to ensure shared understanding of effective INW and should foster high personal readiness through joint exercise, continuous exercise, spearheaded by coordination, all cyber training and educated exercises for incorporating INW and planning to integrate into training. NATO should standardize key to cyber INW terminology. NATO may consider recommending the prioritization of various indicators. Third is thumped a Ukraine DoD. 8A, the DoD authorization of security assistance of valid ability to meet Ukraine 18th Rockdown Sockets, the largest round for a significant amount of ammunition, weapons, and equipment. Second, security cooperation as France 19. The DoD considers 4,000 security cooperation events a year, tens of thousands of foreign forces. Third, no con Iran, Pakistan. 22, Iran and North Korea growing sophistication. We support efforts against Iranian-backed proxy cybercom stem from Pyongyang's complaint. And Ukraine as becomes a separate plus fundable. 72, Ukraine US IAI 3.02 EU-COM 3.5 billion replace the DoD stock cars. 3.5 billion made for under the ONM. The Turkey appeasement is said. One, it's thumped a Madrid summit that's out in 22. Essex summit was a successor on car, no arms embargo, commitment to Turkish countries, no way to YPG, endorsement from the White House for strengthening Turkish air power, F-16 jet sales, tragic shock language and countering terrorism, prominence given Turkish concern. Second, F-16 Phillips 22 sale, F-16 to Turkey will not allow Erdogan to intensify campaigns of them to attack Greece. Turkey uses weaponry against allies. Third, Ukraine, Turkey sent the trucks of aid to NATO allies during the invasion, Fourth, the new security mechanism is Erdogan. Fourth, Turkey and the U.S. have launched a cooperation in economy and defense team by influence Turkish American official all and hard to review mutual interests, including defense cooperation. The aim is to positive cooperation. Second, no link ADF is not a concession. It's a cybersecurity initiative with allies, which is not unique for either side. Second, Bolton is wrong. That's Benson 14. The alliance is hostile to act aggressively. The aggressive enhances deterrence, but has it advances deterrence, a little cost to entrapment because adversary calibrates its hostility towards allies based on expression of winning a conflict, add resource and willingness to fight back, encourage the party to refrain. No conflict occurs, likely more hostile to deter conflict. Turkey is not aggressive. A lack of betches. 22. Turkey is not there's no evidence that actions are geared towards replacing the allies. Turkey was pursuing a parallel policy when at times it overlaps with that of the EU, US, and NATO.
Good?
Yep.
Reasons reject the team, international fiat, floating pigs, condo. Anything else?
Utopian fiat on the K.
Okay.
Agent counter plans.
Okay. Is that it?
Let me double check. Yeah, that's
Cool. I want to talk about the stuff on the stuff on the EU counter plan. Actually, for the DSCA data, did you read the Albon card?
Oh, which Albon card?
The NATO salts card?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I want to talk about the stuff on the EU counterplan.
Mhm.
It's like the Afina card is about why we shouldn't decentralize systems. The counterplan centralizes it under EU authority. It makes it so it's a cohesive international organization. Why is decentralization a deficit?
The Afina card is in the context of NATO. The argument we'll make, which is from the second advantage, is that NATO owns certain INW infrastructure, which means even if you feel another international actor does something similar to the app, it can't solve all of the app because we've indicated that NATO INW structures are uniquely key and only NATO alliance can access.
But only France, Britain, and the United States have NC3 systems. I'm confused as to why cooperating with those countries only does not solve the NC3 impact that is the impact of the second advantage.
Yeah, so the Albon card from the 1AC actually makes a very key distinction here that it's not a question of the countries that are within each alliance, but the alliance itself, i.e. NATO as an alliance structure, owns INW systems, which the app would solve.
Okay,
and EU can't.
That's fine. I want to talk about this stuff. Actually, T, you said we get EU counterplan, but then you said international fiat's bad. Which one do we get?
It's an example of a functional limit. I mean, if you want to have the theory debate, we'll have it. Like, it's not like an either or statement.
Okay, that's fine. Croatia pick. The stuff, actually, Croatia pick. The last card is about how Bosnia is heading towards a second collapse. Why do you think this inevitability argument?
It says that Bosnia is trending towards collapse now, which seems to indicate.
Our argument is about secessionism, but why, Bosnia would secede from, not, institutional collapse? Why is this an answer?
Well, it's like the impact is the same. Like, if Bosnia collapses, it's like functionally the same thing as secession.
What? Okay, that's fine. I want to talk about the stuff. Actually, yeah, the second Afina card on the thing, it says NATO relies on tactical data links. It provides information in real time, and then it says it's key to early warning. Where does it say that where does it say that NATO owns these technologies?
It says that attacks on NATO result in escalation. The argument is that Russia would attack NATO as an alliance.
Where does it say that?
Talks about how, quote, NATO relies on tactical TTL, it provides information near real time.
Where does it say that attacks?
Yeah, and then it says, quote, critical for early warning planning. If it's a question of why Russia attacks it, that is obviously the 1AC internal link.
Okay, so again, why is NATO critical to this early warning system? I'm still
Because
confused.
the same thing I just told you earlier, it's a question of which alliance owns early warning systems.
Like, if all the members in the EU are basically in NATO, I'm confused as to what is changing about this early warning
Yeah,
system.
there is a distinction between countries that are in each alliance and the alliance itself. So we all agree that the EU includes a vast majority of NATO countries. That's irrelevant. It can't solve it because it's a question of whether or not the alliance owns structures. So even if there's a bunch of countries that are the same, they still can't access it because they don't have authority.
Okay. Prop 8. Stop drop 550.
Would it be possible to get either of those emails on the chain? Because I don't think any of them ended up on there.
Yeah, sure.
This says that it was blocked. There might be a
Yeah, the first one was blocked.
That's annoying.
Okay, send out the Tootsie. Order is going to be the EU counterplan, then the Croatia pick,
EU, Croatia.
and then advantage on advantage here. Okay, is everyone good? Not yet? Just let me know. Okay.
Counterplan tells the F has the EU cooperate with NATO and invite the US to follow on to the plan ZEPs. Any US or NATO key devs says that plan was completely dropped and was included in the 1C Counterplan text, so you should read it. No new one-air spinner answers deferred sufficiently for me. Any US net benefit. Hours and unquantifiable salty deficit. Hours you can judge the Counterplan first because safety first unless you get infinite prep time. EU security cooperation solves for every reason. NATO fails. NATO expansion allows adversary or return to European markets. Flips the script on salty deficits. LUs 21 EU prison more effective actor in NATO incarnate to dodge the loss of relative on members in favor of EU member cause adversary inflation a charm off to secure access to European markets China Russia loves the Europeans in a false sense of security. Actually, scratch that card I just read. Forget I read it. Okay, next argument. Perm do both. Perm do both is the first argument. No, it doesn't. At least it doesn't solve the internal net benefit, but also the shooting argument was not explained. The 2AC, the 1 hour obviously gets, or the 2 hour obviously gets new answers. It tanks leadership because leaving the US out at the onset lets the EU assume a lead role. The permutation will fold Europe to a US initiated project, making them dependent junior parties. McLean, 19 unilateral US gets the US to take the vacuum of the emergency active use. As also possibly for some equal party use. Except for leadership should gather with a peace, but not only default something else not for you to find international cash to become global power. The perm undermines EU push for autonomy. Sherman, 21 Europe needs to open industrial policy to sovereignty to Europe to export EU challenges. Independent use the policy are focused on how come to deliver no borders. Regulation operations here to Europe as a global regulation first here to activate to their attention to the inner itself. Next, perm to the counterplan. It does not. The counterplan is obviously severance. The counterplan does not fiat US action. Only the EU the following itself is a solvency argument. It's not admitted. They could have made say no deficits, but they did. In severs, it's sever first the US and it's possessed up to grave 91 now. No, the single percent permanent is clear the implication release the US. Not the 50 voted for clash because last two-way shifting to spike out of negative offense. Now the next is the intrinsic permutation. It's the same as Perm do both functionally because they haven't explained any difference, and we also get new answers. But crossplay because it doesn't include the EU acting first, which is key for the internal net benefit. Next theory, next international fiat is good. Our interpretation is that you can only fiat the EU. One is Netflix, no disad links or uniqueness, outside literature, no limits on security competition means tried after neg generic. 2 is logically the resolution because competition based on USF cheats the most. Predictable 30 is education. ASIPs 13 is students contrast EU useful self strength. We just tell us to understand cultural benefit possibilities. There's something about useful process when variety for all policies. Negation theory competition determines legitimacy. Next, real world policymakers have to regularly choose between pursuing different international organizations. They get no offense. One is abuse, judge norms, and community consents for the world peace counterplan, or the worst case scenario. 2 is Afghan NATO keywords or diamond dust. It's not that hard. 3 is predictability. Converted lip basis. Solve Mad 27 actors and force the parties are proliferating. The first one actors a solution to come. Because B's empirics prove teams that EU and Canada counterplans on the space topic, but never progress into abuse. If we defer to reasonability, then they agree on topicality. Theory is a question of in-round abuse. Debate doesn't set a precedent. Voting F. Vote F if the net committee agrees in-round abuse. Non-verse theories obviously where single country arguments don't solve because ad hoc to announce one country, not reciprocal, and doesn't solve any of our offense. Now next is the internal. Now next is the two US. Next is the two deficits grouped up together. The first, the US key deficit is obviously wrong when they conceded that the US follows on because the EU would invite the US to follow on. They have no reason why the US would say no. So all the reasons why the US keys solve with the counterplan. Now the next NATO key deficit, again the same thing, the counterplan, but also the EU includes most of the same allies in NATO. They have no military key war broadly, so it solves it on 2 fronts. Now the next is the internal net benefit defense. Counterplan solves it by revitalizing EU leadership. Any risk we access is enough since they drop solvency. The 2AC read no cards here. Net benefit always on magnitude because EU legitimacy prevents global war from versionist powers who are breaking the liberal order. Norm setting solidifies rule of law and multilateral, but must be championed credibly by actors with sufficient sway to create broad support. Transnational threats are increasing now. The environment, trading, human rights are all collapsing, which will wreck global sustainability unless actively permit us Balfour. I'm not going to read a new card here, so they don't get new answers, but it does prove that his atonement impact, which is in the 1C card. We just need a risk that's different from the status quo to prove the counterplay. Now the pick. The counterplay solves the F. It does security cooperation with all NATO members. Stands Croatia solves the net benefit because security cooperation with Croatia is used to justify Boston Orientalism, which undermines strategies to stop Serbian secessionism and Balkan. The Civil War. Perm both includes Croatia, which is a legal requirement based on the phrase the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That's the 1C Johnson evidence. Perm the counterplay is severance, which is the voter explained above. 1 is textually the counterplay doesn't include NATO, which is best. That's its least arbitrary. Encourages plan specificity, technical precision. Most predictable. 2's function. The counterplay does not increase in NATO, which is an international organization that legal personality is distinct. Perm gutter 10. NATO's legal entity under ILA permanent legal personality international states. International personality means international liabilities for members of an international organization. This is autonomous, which expresses independent will. The only possible interpretation of these is all not ceremony. U.S. Court of Appeals 6 Circuit 15 and word the one sense of country construction orders the division of country the ceremony D data is a whole body dot the collective not now is one of the whole bodies the whole is one of the members to be considered. It's entirely distinct. Now to 17 constitution for NATO of the and you consider autonomy for members to sovereignty for members as acceptable members to a high degree of autonomy. That's best. One Netflix negative host with the linking needs no reciprocal base which is set above turns Afghan because it determines the quality of those debates. Second, precision turns Afghan predictability. Prep is worthless if unpredictable. 2 internal links. A's calls are evidence sites of legal advisor NATO Court of Appeals. B's context. We define the resolution in tandem to provide a clear vision. Any other interpretation creates incoherent topic. 3rd is logic. The resolution shifts specific NATO ally. 22 USA NATO ally to NATO ally means a member of NATO. Objectivity always creates predictability. 4 is limits. Their interpretation green lights expulsion. 30 factorial asks that pick and choose a country of the day. 5 theory it justifies it, which I sort of said above about agent counterplans being good. 6 is real world. We've considered a bunch of salty advocates that answer their over limiting and Afghan arguments below. Below, obviously, the one year will have to make new arguments, so the tutor gets new answers. Now, the intrinsic permutation is the same thing because it still includes Croatia. That happens as a result of the F. So, links to net benefit, they haven't explained the distinction. Now, the next NATO key deficit, resolving the member states' NC3 system will ensure NATO systems continue to function. The framing should that NC3 architecture is only owned by France, Britain, and the UK, who have nukes, meaning the only states that can miscalculate are France, Britain, and the US. Only the cabinet solves this. When I see Afina at 18 that NATO members are security reliable, even when alliance and NC3 under attack, all members should be able to demonstrate their architecture comes to function as one of the EU authorities slice only use person and NC direction function because I think connectivity the UK takes it for fire submarine environment authors launch and nuclear missile community use military grade system for nuclear between France authors plus secure maintaining US president sulfur is launching nuclear weapons. Now the no kick-out argument it doesn't make any sense because we don't need kick-outs. It's about Croatia being legitimated by new security cooperation because the increasing Bosnia operations now kick-out is not key to solvency because it's just about new security cooperation initiatives which we just need a risk of that to result in internal benefit. They haven't read any cards here, so they can go for it. Now the defense, separatist nationalism causes refugee crisis, economic devastation is unmitigated. Turns the case because it causes internal NATO conflict that circumvents the AF and strains great power relations, making war with Russia and China inevitable. Bosnia being on the verge of collapse flips negative. The card doesn't say when will happen, but it does prove that the threshold for secession is way lower. The counter solves it, so any risk of it proves that we access it. Now conditionality, it's good. One is logic. Destroying the counterpart doesn't prove the plan is good. Their rational interpretation kills education predictability, which justifies judge kick second Netflix and ideological offenses. Key rigorous testing results competitive equity and ideological education side by side bad topic. Prove inability causes community schism. Third is risk averse. Force to make our best arguments against the negative fallback to encourage research. 4 is no impact. 2 narcolepsy checks. Diminishing utility perms checks. Speed differences. This has a t-square. Whereas 5 counter temperature. We get what we did. No more arbitrary. Then there's 6 not a voted threshold. Is winning. We had even impossible. Non-risk 3 cost substance credit. This is not unifiedly agreed upon by the debate community, and there's no community consensus. So it's arbitrary and links back to their offense. Now the attacks advantage at the top. Grid collapse is fake. One is back house. The grid is not fully interconnected and is hosted by thousands of systems that are geographically and digitally different. If one goes down, 99% of installations will be fired. 2 recalls highly risky attack another country's grid because of interdependence. If Russia takes down infrastructure, then they lose all of our imports and theirs as well, including financial systems, food, manufacturing, etc. The 2AC just extended their impact without actually responding to our warrants. I don't have to read new cards here. Now, cyber war itself is unlikely because the 2AC, because 1 is attribution, uncertainty removes cover for retaliation. They had no coherent response to this other than that Russia wants to attack. 2 is restraint. 2nd, strategic constraints prove. 3rd is capabilities of retail and domestic pressure pass on Russian intent. I've inserted 1 is the Aldenova. Below 4 Stumper solar winds Ukraine colonial pipeline doesn't have other attacks prove no escalation. They haven't isolated bring to any of the offense. Now the miscalc advantage at the top. No use Russia war balance is stable with minimal arsenals and declining force deployments. Highest casualty risk and economic cost of escalation. That's the current match evidence. Empirics prove that it won't go nuclear because every time it has come close, both sides have blanket. Rational humans won't risk survival. That's a zebra evidence. Putin won't risk it. Wolf 20 prove Russian has version need to why Putin Russia would want to adventure to risk confrontation with nuclear NATO opportunities for regular Putin appears to set Russian invested in conventional offices that's a buffer against the nuclear threshold. Now the NC3 hacking itself is bunk. 1 is deterrence. Threatening nuclear silos is high risk, low reward endeavor because even if one goes down, dozens more from your target and its allies are primed for launch. And accidents are at all costs. Y22, it could be something similar to explanatory and subject to future pressure to lend less to decide to build several new technology guarantees error and how system function about American lost content with launch system. They've dictated false launch because machinery is mishandled. I'm just gonna sip of water. Yeah, I'm good.
The EU counterplan, does NATO follow on to the counterplan as well?
Yes.
Where part of the counterplan fiats that NATO would follow on?
Well, we haven't fiated. You could have read a say no argument. We've just invited NATO to follow on to the counterplan.
They invited NATO to follow on. What's the reason they say yes?
Well, probably because, the reason they'd probably say yes to the F, whatever reason.
Well, they say yes to the F because the US offers them information. So
Well, correct.
Like
Well, the EU would still provide them with capabilities, information, the same things as the F.
provides them with capabilities. Okay.
But these deficits are not made in the 2AC. The 1 year cannot make the arguments.
Sure. If the counterplan results in follow-on, why does that link to the net benefit?
Because the whole point of the internal net benefit is that it's about EU leadership, i.e. the EU taking the lead in policy and the EU taking the lead like over the AF, for example. If NATO and the US were to fall on, that's an example of leadership being effective because it proves that the EU has an effective voice.
So question of who starts it first then?
Correct.
So for permutation, if both actions happen simultaneously, why is it
Well, because that wouldn't make any sense because it'd be we read a card, we read the 1NC card and the card we read in the 2NC, I forget the author, both talked about why if the EU were to act simultaneously with other actors, the EU would be perceived as being less.
Says, quote, leaving the US out allows the EU to assume a lead role, but then you said the counterplan also includes the US because
correct, because it'd be the EU initiating that process. The US would not take the lead. The US would not propose the plan. They would not propose anything, which means because right now we read uniqueness claims about how the EU's leadership is not at its full level because, and the reason for that, and the reason that's why the permutation fails, as well as because in a world where they cooperate simultaneously, the EU would be a footnoted.
The Croatia pick, does the pick look like bilateral agreements between NATO allies and the US?
Yeah, like it'd be like pretty much.
Bilateral agreements. So there's no structure that every ally would have to agree
Well, no, that's not the same thing because there would still be because presumably the U.S. would give the same be cooperating the same way with all 29 or all the countries
with.
except
Yeah, but
Croatia.
NATO as a structure is not involved in the counter.
Well, NATO as an organization is not involved, but obviously if all 29 countries or all 28 countries in the U.S. are operating on the same framework that achieves the same signal.
Yeah, that makes sense. The no kick-out answer, I'm confused why the counterplan doesn't have to result in kicking out
Because
Croatia.
we read evidence from the 1&C that talks about, and you've also read the cards you read about Bosnian collapse being imminent. Also, sort of flips neg in this scenario because it proves that like any sort of instance of security cooperation is a reason that gives Croatia the guise
Yeah, but like
to engage in.
presumably NATO will continue to security cooperate in the future, so I'm just confused why like future cooperation doesn't inevitably.
Well, again, we read the evidence that we read in the 2&C talks, or in the 1&C also refers to like the U.S. and NATO legitimizing not just like minor aspects of security cooperation, but also things that involve intelligence sharing, resource sharing, things that the AF would do, for example, that would legitimate Croatia.
Because to clarify, in order for you to win the net benefit to the PIC, you have to win that post-counterplan. Croatia will never do info sharing with NATO.
Not necessarily, but also like the PIC would probably generate uniqueness. Even then, we just have to win a risk that.
Explain that to me. Why does the PIC generate uniqueness?
We just have to win a risk that we access the net benefit.
Okay, so just a small risk, yes.
Any risk is enough.
That's fine.
But also, like we've read cards saying that the impact is likely.
DSCA pick. DSCA disad. Turkey disad. Security pick.
Can you say that again?
The pick.
Yeah.
The disad.
Yeah.
Turkey disad.
Yeah.
Security pick.
I think we're both good. Whatever.
Okay, I'm good too.
Okay, cool. I feel like this is gonna fall.
That's fine.
Alright, it's whatever. DSCA pick can see the permutation theories of reason direct the argument on the team. DSCA just can see numbers. This proves the link. The app solves the words incoherent. The internal links about FMS not deterrence. And Turkey decide can see the numbers. It disproves the link. And Turkey adventures from the turn if they read is incoherent because the number proves that cooperation should solve security cave. 2AC1 was framework way the app as a piece of scholarship. The roles and negatives has 1AC justifications and Turkey advantages solvency, but not all representations. Winning the 1AC is participating in harmful and deceptive rhetorical practices is sufficient for the battle for 1. Distancing emphasize debates over scholarship. Voting app does not pass the plan, but voting nev remedies violent epistemologies to accessibility. Orient debates toward a universal heuristic. That's bad. A engagement. Reoriented debate from esoteric discussions with extras maintains public interest, garners support and value from greater participation. B research. Voting neg forces people to employ real world standards when developing 1ACs, which shapes the skills we deploy outside the debate. 3 info pollution. Impact first. Agitates libidinal investments in the militarism. A Bianco. 14 or 16. Affecting economies of no circulation, if you're distributed in a setting of very sweeping invested libidinity, safety, affect, shapes activity, paranoia, segregation, but fourth fear, and not in the war by Jason guys. Fear, justify force, the whole time opposing authority, ignorance, serves politics and militarism, ensures zero policy for force, officer, their interpretation, words, and system by investing in myopic offensive paradigm that incentivizes proliferating impact garbage in hopes of exploiting unfairness to no offense. 1 reciprocity, forcing the judge to adopt a heuristic, checks back against contrived D is 2 interlink framework, begs the question of values they behold, which is a prior question. They say fairness, link turn that was above, there's no impact. Half choice solves, neg flex outweighs no neg ground nor limits. And outside bias means air neg. They say clash, link turn that was above, no impact. Our model solves predictability, but regressive process counterplans. And T link back to them. They said weigh the app. Reps and consequences are two different scales. Their interpretation boils down to no case because no link outweighs extinction. Reps are a question of scholarship, not its impacts. The idea that you should check on an extinction is bad. Reject util and debate kahane. 15 research focus on util and margin limits. Participant shows the fact of safety rate. Sensitivity of retaliation of util aside to limits and traits of judgment and behavior effect. In break us for greater util rates associated with greater units and attenuation of security. As a division of humanity, such a literal relation between height and negative limits. Genuine util approach. Now 2AC2, I just did it. 2AC3 do both fails. 1 perm is incoherent. We've impact turn. They're framing if we went framework. They sever 1 makes the plan meaningful. Voted for clash and education. 2 it does not solve the A. The AF meshes the all with the ecology of fear. Belch kick. 15. Another key of security is the most content context find a substantial compromise and elevated effects that personal underpins and possibility can save context of illusion, motive security, motive of nation is strong to produce weapons that is changing configuration context and power security active kind of purposes make outcome. B colon now the links are disguised. I'll do them here. Early warning. The one he sees demand of early warning cyber deterrence as an affirmation of the logic of militarizing surveillance and construed threats from out there. Specifically implicates how militarism has exploited nuclear assets as a form of unchecked surveillance to redefine political reality through visual assemblages that justifies interventions in the Middle East, Africa, and South Asia. Cyber war is a construct of the military establishment that green lights endless conflicts burdening the country. 20 cyber war is a prohibition about the after cyber war is on uncertainty, but it contracted to help us to even past state control surveillance security and can be ongoing. First one, if I damage when I continue to reverse engineering differences stagnate, continuing to Russian international order warfare justified nation state leader over militarism approaches a xenophobia link, citing Russia as a threat to Western security is by definition a form of insecurity. The laws of militarized architecture to invoke hostility via ends justify the means campaign that this filters down to externalizing Russia the threat to Western security infrastructure. Multiple lines prove the 1AC white evidence paints a self-imposed narrative of Russian motives and agrees that securitized cyber forces is what causes or impact it turns the app. A paranoid interpretation sustains effectual violence due to authorization of non-US great powers that cements antagonistic epistemologies with co-op scenario planning. B implementation. It results in weaponizing early warning not as a deterrent but rather intervention, which triggers advantage 1 and 2. Now, their impact presumes a rigid binary between war and peace that makes system analysis of orders of violence impossible. Learns 22 dimensional violence and not war women, so less than order death over the global race on the rise of shared the hybridity between war, peace, and violence and violence and major motives, political, economic, interpersonal, ideological boundaries, sources on reality, and responses. No difference in the war does not capture crucial factors of violence that shift and evolve. No war to key forms of violence such as urban insecurity, market urban insecurity. The two that lens through the all cyber's a plan in their framing proven on the link debate now. Yes, there's an impact of securitization. But 21 Washington, I'm interruption when intervening in every nation, Russia, India, Pakistan. No good to run, no good. No top one, but it's how do you right now? Because you can corruption and geopolitical advantage between flagging. Additionally, in which intervention leads fashions on upon the world conflicts, so division unless the rescue rate of first world conflicts have been fading extension, depression, innovation, possible device on imbalance. This direction is shift away in direction of policies that we have to disprove the app stuff. No, the links were above in case defense proves now the realism stuff. Try or die. Extinction is inevitable under realism. It outweighs transactional violence. Reject their truth claims. Ideology is so objective and predictable in external events and IR really contracts. Social understanding, positivism is a failed method of understanding, predicting events makes our often evidence epistemology subject. The vote negative indoor securitization. It solves the alternative forms pedagogy. Pedagogy is from power and sustaining direct articulations of IR to break down false epistemologies or removes the incentive of security cooperation as a platform for weaponizing emerging technologies, which delinks imperial praxis of power that's one. So in the case since an offense, you can vote neg even if the plan's policy is desirable. Reject their framing of using security as a justification. Solves because they have no defensive representations. Floating pickets who had one neg flag structural side bias and lack of untenable next generation testing scholarships the only consistent basis for ground. 3 2 education frameworks proves the value of 4 clash. Hard debate is good debate. 5 it's reciprocal. They chose their scholarship the apps when they comparing conditions were not international or private actor fiat.
It's nice that they included two of the most despicable capitalists of all time to find inspiration from.
Okay. Sorry, I have the wrong doc up.
Wait, sorry. We're actually gonna take one. Did anyone write down how much stuff we took before? 248, 246. I wrote it down. We're good.
Okay. Order.
There, two separate cards and two separate emails.
Yeah, because I'm dumb. I sent it out and then I was like, oh wait, I have another one. That one's okay.
It's good you own it.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Sorry.
Oh, wait. What's the order?
The order attacks, miscalc, EU, Croatia, and security. Okay. Anyone not good?
2 seconds. Sorry. Okay.
First, concede the grid scenario. We're not going for the no offense on the flow. Onto miscalc. NATO and C3 is vulnerable. Green lights attacks in Q3 is inevitable due to miscalc causes extinction. Independently, Russia, one of the Russia war allies can communicate with each other means is uniquely likely to escalate the point of recovery, and they concede that it causes nuclear winter, and so the threshold to outweigh should be low, and the interdependence deficit doesn't matter because it doesn't assume rogue actors making it look like it's other states. That was the one I see. And yes, and in vulnerabilities now, Russia can occupy several wars. I think because attribution means that actors think they can get off, and they attack in the fog of war, assuming in C3 they're going to be attacked, causes escalation on the EUCP. First, permanent assault that's received, the U.S. holding on to U.S. leader, the EU leadership looked like both pursue their policies at the same time on deficits. First, on the advantage they can't solve it. The question of NATO and C3s, one distinction now they draw an alliance system can't be distinct from the counterplane resolved into the international system that can't solve integral NATO is owned by NATO and integration synchronizing NATO and allied nations and C3 crucial to stability during crisis that have been an impact to both is miscalc solving the international will liability half the path of the puzzle. None of them definitely don't solve NATO's best. The US just folds on no card that says NATO also falls on, and NATO systems are separate and key Alpharetta et al. 22. Within NATO under the command of the allies provide resources in the NATO system command and the nationalism in NATO together to the better separates, and we insert the internal net benefit. I know you floated at the bottom of the 2 EC. There's no one, there's no spillover. The single instance is sufficient to receive global governance, and B, there's no internal impact, and it sucks and on the Croatia CP. First, they conceded in CX that they are bilateral agreements do not include NATO at all, so solvency deficits on the EU's counterplane apply on perm to the CP. First, definitions prove it's not particularly textually separate, and does not mean V does not mean all. It doesn't just because you made the food doesn't mean you made all the food. It's a USD definition. Preferred one, debatability. The Peens lose to USFG because they don't have every branch of the security cooperation. Just the DoD country picks are bad forces after the Estonia key warrants which are impossible burden, and 2% in the US can into the court. It's the most predictable and plain meaning. These not all these that turn back to the subject to described the decrease a particular dead person, and then the NATO definition C modifies NATO. We don't have to win the plan. It's all of NATO if we win the, and the 9/11 wasn't all states NATO 22. Terrorist attacks in US and 9/11 terrorist attacks in the US and 9/11 and bilateral still have to go through NATO, and then we meet T proves we have to get the topic links to NATO action must work for the app. We need 30 country key warrants and impossible to prep, and they can't solve the internal net benefit, have to win, and then they kick out of Croatia or future cooperation Thompson and Mactons into the session, and inevitably links to the soil that lesson to reserve left conflict with Croatian. Then let's go on to the K. First framework, the plan brings the consequences. A, clash plan with the focus and predictable offense turns. Their individual aids have little weight in affecting subjectivities and long-term process does. And B, fairness, decentering plan starts to being the one C kills. Predictable ground and the common structure, debate, speech time, speaker points, and the fact that They run other exchange and rep proofs in the matter of preserving the game, and it worsens the internal link to their impacts and solves are often taken so they give reps links an influential plan in development which limits generic links and forces research. We just get the way the app is functionally the same. If you think that a book has no right line, the app is good enough, and then we don't get an actual app. The way against the K proves how to assign their model is also proves that there's no internal link to caution. The team is competitive and the incentive to adjudicate as much of the case as possible, and it's the research, it's the other way around. No incentive to research policy if that other framework interprets the future team. The truth shape is that can't be realized, and B, class assurance, research inevitable school proves and debated that is unique because we give in-depth class in that ways because it's only unique value to debate and on fairness. First, yes, impact of fairness and reason. We're all here in debate. No one wants to play an unfair game and procedural fairness. That way, structural fairness is no reason. It's procedurally unfair, and their interest does not dissolve into no case. They still get case, but they don't need the links to prove the material consequence from the app, i.e. reasons why the app is circumvented or unique reasons the app plans is implemented in a different way, and the links require them to zero risk of the case debate. Other the ludicrous scenarios are true, and then therefore not ludicrous, and cross-apply from above no alternative them, and then let's remember about the deontology versus util, and their interp doesn't solve. Team 6 still shot down terrible scenarios for the neg, and no paranoia that the internal links reside in the subjectivity formation. Genuine investment into the scholarship we read, that's wrong, and switch head debate, otherwise going for hedge bag and hedge good, but it cause more chaos. And 3, all causes school, religion, the reps all that way. And extinction outweighs extinction reps are the good talking about extinction rates in the debate, create comparison in the only experience because of the forced re-examination of the idea that everyone is human and it's the only non-objective framework and anything else puts minorities against each other. It's only, read this. And study prove extinction risk causes motivates for social values even if we're wrong, valid on that 9. The study goes beyond religious contact, provides support of great member offending because it's general threat, motivating intolerance.
Mark the credit card.
5. Yeah, 550.
babies. Yeah, I'm not doing so great. So,
Really? How old are they?
so the sophomore team.
No, I meant your physical
Oh, my like
children.
actual babies. Oh, I thought you meant like the debate babies.
I don't care
The
about
actual babies.
they're irrelevant.
Baby sophomores are getting wrecked by some mean girls. How are your kids doing?
I don't have any actual kids with my debaters. I guess.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like your debate kids.
Because I have a cat. That's it.
No, I know. These are all my kids.
Not great.
Like,
The sophomores are doing okay. We're the sophomore team in the breakout.
that's good.
Pulled that one out of their butts.
What?
Said they pulled that one out of their butts. Not even our top sophomore team. That's the weird part.
It's a weird tournament. I mean,
I guess it doesn't matter at this point. They're both pretty good. Both kind of
the like
1A, 1B.
side constraints for round 6, I think, messed up a lot of things. So.
Yeah.
Honestly, just glad to be here.
I remember going to this tournament when I was in high school. I went 5-0 and got into round 6 and got vaporized. Maybe that's the word. It's like little tiny pieces of me were blowing in the wind.
DKB is judging my sophomore babies, and I don't think he remembers because I had a different last name that I judged him in college.
Who's this?
DKB. Voted him down versus Faith Garrity.
Oh, jeez. She's a weight.
Yeah, she did a super impressive framework to her entirely off the flow. Just like, big kills.
It was still 32nd, right?
Oh, no, that's I believe you.
LASA head games.
Sorry.
It's just so nice to be at an in-person tournament.
Are you going to St. Mark's?
We're not. We're going to the Glenbrooks, and then I'm hoping I can talk some teams into going to Alta.
We're going to Texas.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Well, that'll be fun.
We're so excited.
Oh, it's
about
gonna be
it.
great.
Yeah.
What weekend is it?
Same weekend as Alta. We've done Alta the last couple of years.
Alta's tough to turn
But
down.
it's weird because there's no Sunday debate, so
Yeah.
it was the timing didn't work out well because of travel.
Alta's hard for me to turn down, putting on our
Counterplan.
schedule.
Pig.
Counterplan. Okay, thank you
That's
for
my home.
specifying which counterplan.
Yeah. EU counterplan, the Croatia pick, the security K,
Yeah, they changed our finals this year, so we can't. We normally do Dowling and then we do Blake.
Yeah.
So it's a shame we're not going to have to go to West Des Moines and Minneapolis. Instead, we're going to go to Texas and we're going to go to Arizona State in January instead. So.
Well, Alta's my hometown, so that's
Oh,
hard
okay.
to pronounce. It's all like.
All right, talk fast.
Alright, so everyone's good. Here's like just let me know. The counterplan is a slam dunk for the negative. You should hold a line on every single piece of alpha argumentation. When the 2NC answered the wrong counterplan and did not explain a permutation, since then the 2NC strategically chose not to introduce new arguments, which means everything the 1AR said is definitely new. Even if you don't buy the counterplan, the 1AR and 2AC continuously drop nuanced warrants on the case, which take out the terminal impacts to the deficit. So even we just have to win a small risk that the counterplan solves, and to be asked that benefit to outweigh any sort of terminal impact on case. EU cooperation with NATO and the US solves every single deficit they have. They have no card saying that neither the US or NATO would not follow orders or say no. I know you think it's ridiculous that we just read a bunch of text, but they have not read a card saying so. They had every opportunity to do so in the 2AC or asked us in cross which they haven't done so. So you have to hold the line. The only argument that they can go from the 2 is permutation to both, but they cannot do so when they've dropped a couple key warrants. They have cards 0 on this, while we have 3. A couple warrants. One is footnoting simultaneous actions as a perception of the status quo, where the US takes charge of the liberal order and sends the EU to the bottom. That's the 2NC make clean evidence. We're winning uniqueness argument that the EU is sort of being disadvantaged now in sort of multilateral efforts, and that they need to take the lead in the status quo to solve a litany of transnational threats, which will sort of extend at the bottom. But they've dropped the 2NC clean card, which sort of answers this. But second is dependence. It continued status quo dependence on the United States, which is the opposite of the net benefit. That's the Tuesday Sherman evidence because the fact that the EU would take charge and that the perception continues. Another word of the permutation, which means that the EU will be submissive to the U.S. and not solve any of the things that we have said are key for leadership and the terminal impact to it. Both cards are conceded, and they have no answers. Third is hold the line. Alex will sound really ethosy in the 2 air, but if you cannot connect it back to the 2 air, the 1 air, you should strike it off of your flow. The next sort of integration deficit is obviously ridiculous when they haven't made a NATO say no war. Obviously NATO could, even if we do have no cards, the same reasons that the countries would say yes to NATO countries, that NATO countries would say yes to the US, the same reason why they would say yes to the EU. The only argument that they made in cross-stakes was the fact that the EU offers intelligence, but they have not read a card saying that the EU does not have the requisite intelligence or capabilities. Now, especially when the capital would fit every single country of the European Union, which would obviously have at least some sort of intelligence, that would be enough to solve the gap. Now the next argument was the no spillover stuff. Now it's false. One is that the fact that there's no solvency deficit means that any risk reacts even a little bit more EU leadership solves is sufficient. But second, yes, spillover. It's unprecedented for the EU to leverage all NATO allies simultaneously, and also the United States, which read a bunch of uniqueness cards saying that's true. The one is the Serotonin card is also conceded, and it's very good. It's extended at the top of the 2 overview. It says that that one instance of sort of the Europe taking the initiative can have spillover effects in all sort of things like security, defense, and security defense only if Europe has a leadership role, which conceded, and you should definitely read after this debate. Now the last argument was the sort of no impact stuff that was not articulated, no warrants, no cards, but EU leadership outweighs there. If I win some impact defense, you should treat this as also uncontested dissad external to the case. Even if the Terror wins, it's not existential. Winning is different from the status quo, sufficient to prove net benefits. The counterpoint solves it. It outweighs on Maddie's biggest legitimacy prevents global war from revisionist powers who are breaking the liberal order now. Norm setting solidifies rule of law multi-led, but must be championed credibly by actors with sufficient sway to recruit national support. They've also dropped a uniqueness claim that threats are rising now, like environment, trade, human rights, all of which are going to the accidental cause extinction. That's the Balfour evidence. Leadership also drops encompasses every single impact. It turns the app because they revitalize diplomacy, which increases negotiations between great powers and solves the terminal impact internally to the NC3 impact. Any other deficit was not carded, not explained. Hold the line onto our extrapolation. Now the pick, concede the permutation test option. We're not going to go for it. No on the flow theories, reject the argument, not the team. Critique, not going for concede the permutation, and all their arguments to the theories are reject the argument, not team. Advantage. No chance of US-Russia war. No chance of US-Russia war. First, they dropped empirics that it won't go nuclear. Every time there have been instances when it has come close, but both sides have swayed away from it because they're rational and have interdependencies that they both rely on. They dropped sort of the explanation for the 2NC that it's highly risky to attack each other on the grid defense that they conceded, because if Russia were to take down NC3 systems, they would also inadvertently spill over into their own systems if they write about all their spillover wars about having cascades, which includes things like financial systems, food, manufacturing, etc. Which is what both countries rely on. The rogue actors thing is inevitable. It's a deficit to the AF2. They haven't made an explanation how they solve. Those rogue actors are wide, but also they're probably risk averse too, because they have incentives to keep up the system, so they have resources to operate. Now they've also dropped the wolf card from the 2NC that says that Putin won't risk it any sort of terminal attack that could escalate because he has economic interest, and he wants to avoid a nuclear threshold. They haven't signed any military documents, which only we have, which that says that he's against all a confrontation. Now they've also dropped a couple of indicts from the 2NC. First, the indict of their 1AC white card. It says that there are tons of all causes to sort of NC3 hacking because there are things like deterrence and deterrence misperceptions and accidents that frequently happen, but that don't actually cause escalation, which is one either a thumper or proves that the impact is inevitable. It talks about why errors are sort of guaranteed because of the variability of systems and how technologies are new and emerging now in the status quo, and they're not sort of controlled. They're not sort of controlled. They've also dropped that threatening nuclear silos itself is high risk, which is sort of explained at the top, because the spillover effects would risk threatening the attacker itself. Even then, case is broadly relevant. Counterpoint solves every terminal impact of the case. 2 will definitely be new if they're going to win a deficit. They've dropped every card on the permutation, so they can't go for a perm shield. It was not explained at the 2AC either.
So you're not going to Michigan?
You're not. We are, I've been a little frustrated with the Michigan tournament.
He fixed a lot of the things.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Part of it.
It's not at the high school anymore.
Oh, it's not.
And it's 6 rounds, yeah. 6 and 7 sets.
It's a little tough to convince enough of the kids to travel with so many tournaments back to back.
No.
And it is more financially feasible for us if more teams go because we can split the hotel room costs among 4 kids instead of like 2. So I'm pretty sure if I put Michigan on the schedule, only these 2 fools would go.
Wait, when is it?
Well put.
Sometime in like October, November.
First weekend.
Also, like, we have the Glenbrooks. I think I'm just in a middle place where I would rather support high school debate programs and not
Fair.
give more
No, I
money.
get that.
Like, obviously we go to the TRC, but like, we sort of had
No,
a
that you don't have to
You
just
know.
spell that out to me. That makes a lot of sense.
I just would rather support high school coaches and programs. So most of our schedule this year is high schools. But we are bringing 3 teams to the conference.
It's what Michigan is valuable for us as novices.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's valuable to everybody.
Right,
but
sure.
It really helps novices a lot because they go from we have like our scrimmage, we have like multiple scrimmages, and then like now we're training wheels are off. You're in an actual tournament.
Yeah, for sure. So for us, that's like the Stanford tournament, which is basically all of the like Georgia and Tennessee teams go to like this Birmingham
Yeah, I
tournament.
did that last year.
Oh, you did? Yeah. So we do that. So it's Custer. I don't really like to fly freshmen. I don't think they really need it. I don't really trust them.
Everybody at Greenside was like, we do not put novices on planes.
What?
Greenside was like, we don't put
Yeah, we
novices
don't put
on
novices.
planes. I
In
always
fact,
like that mentality.
They don't travel out of state at all except for Stanford and there's one more thing. Is that it? Take him to UGA, take him to Carrollton in Georgia.
Let's help Harlan.
Sorry.
Dude, that was just funny. Tall and down.
Okay. Everyone good? No winning neck battle from the block has dropped terminal impact defense, and we are winning a large risk of a solvency deficit. I'm going for a NATO miscalc because the counterplan cannot access it. NATO's nuclear infrastructure services cybertags, which puts everyone on red. Specifically, I'm going for the networks interlink, which is the second Athena card on advantage 2 and it's hyper-specific to NATO. It says, quote, breaches could result in misinterpretation, miscalculation, rapid escalation. All of it is in the context of NATO system collapse causing nuclear LASA with Russia. As they said, no chance of US-Russia war does not assume miscalculation, which I know for sure Sam extended when she was explaining the advantage at the top. Yes, you're right that maybe US and Russia are both rational leaders. None of that assumes a world in which NC3 systems are integral with nuclear escalation, which means even if they're unintentionally attacking our nuclear ops, it doesn't matter because it escalates inevitably. They said N3 systems spill over. Obviously, grid is not the same as N3C, which means we could be right that grid systems are not segmented and that they're interrelated with each other, but NC3 systems are not, which means it doesn't result in spillover either. They said reactors, we obviously sufficiently solve it because the after results in increased hardening. They did not question solvency, which means so high risk. They result for other rogue actors as well, but the only existential claim we're going for at the bottom and the 1AC is the question of Russia war. Now, they have conceded the apparent evidence coming out of the 1AC, which indicates only US-Russia war can solve extinction. Will concede that magnitude should frame your battle, which means if it's a question of purely magnitude, you have to vote affirmative on a risk of a solvency deficit. None of their impact cards rise to the level of an existential claim, which means any risk we're the only ones asking an extinction level impact should come first because the tuner is incredibly light when it comes to a question of impact calculus. They said that Putin doesn't risk it, answered by the rationalities of above, irrelevant whether or not he doesn't want to risk nuclear escalation because he does not know that they're nuclearly entangled. They said that accidents thump it. The white evidence is not in the context of an adversary attack. It's about system failures within the US systems and initially does not assume other adversaries attacking us. Satellites is an on-starter, is not also not in the context of NC3 systems and the EU counterplan. The entire second advantage is based on NATO's N3 systems being vulnerable, even if the counterplan accesses both individual allied systems and EU tech. It does nothing about the NATO system at risk. So I explained over and over again in 2AC crossings. The first Athena card dresses distinction and says, quote, not all capabilities are the same. There are capabilities owned by NATO, capabilities provided by allies, which proves even if you're skeptical, the distinction is real and exists. The NATO NC3 system is distinct, proven by the 1 year evidence, which indicates allies providing resources that then go under SAAC command, which shows the F is a prereq to the counterplan went dropped. He said nothing on the question of the 1 AR card, which means you're the only ones reading specific evidence in the context of the app, which establishes a distinction between the EU as an alliance and NATO as an alliance. The next Athena card goes even further to say that we need to integrate the two. It outlines that there is a, quote, need for technical harmonization between the alliance and national systems, which is a burden to solve the advantage of solving both, not just one or the other. The impact to the deficit is US-Russia war due to NATO and miscalc. The 1AC white evidence is specific to NATO ISR collapse going nuclear, which is all the work I did above, proves that the counterplan cannot access. Now, this NATO follow-on argument is tomfoolery and was definitely answered in the 1AR. First, it was new in the 2NC. It answered in the 1AR counterplan text, specified they invite the US to join as as well, which is not NATO as an infrastructure. You can go back to the 1AC to check it. Second, they cannot solve it. They need US information, which is the warrants for yes that I explained. And the 2AC, the US has valuable information that allies would want, which is ours. The EU has nothing to offer them. There's also no card that indicates NATO would follow on. Now, the internal net benefit. I know you flew this in the 2AC because we made eye contact when I was reading this argument. There is no spillover between one EU policy and broader leadership. He asserts that he answers it. He definitely didn't. The 2AC fails the command F test for the word spillover. These 2 words are good but new and should be rejected irrespective of what the 1AC evidence says because it was not explained, and the word spillover was definitely not on the counterplan. There's simply no impact as well. Their card lists a bunch of bad things that could happen, none of them rise to an existential level, which means if this debate is purely a question of magnitude, which she has conceded, we're definitely outweighing on pure solvency deficits. Now, permutation do both. Definitely solve. Permutation means that both policies are passed simultaneously. If they're right that everybody's looking to the US leadership and AI now, then it's far more likely that allies would perceive that the EU is following it and not the US alone, especially because in the world of the plan, allies still have to sign sign on to the plan, which obviously takes time, which means there's a time frame deficit between the app fully passing through NATO follow-on and the EU. The McLean card that they extend says any US action would destroy signaling, does not make a distinction between the EU starting it and the EU following on, which obviously proves there's no time frame distinction between the permutation and the counterplan. Either way, it's perceived as it happens simultaneously, which means there's no reason unilateral EU action has to be unilateral EU action has to be key. They said it is footnoting the McLean evidence I indicted above. They said it's dependence, not dependence, because the permutation still has the EU unilaterally established these policies. The US, which is also signed on, these happened at the same time. But again, in the world of the affirmative, we have to consult with our NATO allies first, which is all of this ASIB I did above. They said that the EU will be submissive to the US. This is the internal link to, this is the internal net benefit debate, which I also said above. They said that they have evidence that said that the US would say yes to the EU, even if the US follows on, NATO doesn't, which again, there's a distinction between the countries that are identified that are within both alliances, and the alliance itself say that there's no solvency deficit. Sam did a lot of this work in the 1AR, and all of it was extended on the EU counterpart. We are going for solvency deficit to it. Spillover was also answered above. Leadership does not turn the app. They have no explanation what leadership does in the context of NC3 systems. Also a new argument as to why it impact turns the app. There's also just no explanation of why leadership resolves Russia wanting to check our NC3 systems. Anything else, Sam?
Yes, card doc. Come to us.
It is recording. It's crazy. Do you want the link after?
Yeah.
I want to see yourself talk. It's very narcissistic of you, Nishan.
What'd you say? I did not hear you. Alex.
What?
Give me that.
I like your glasses actually.
Thank you, Alex.
I think they're better than pre-glasses.
Glasses.
probably is coming from Florida. People doesn't help much. debate. A lot of fun. I vote nay. I think counterplan solves. I was, God, I kept looking at the perm, and I kept looking at the perm, and I kept looking at the perm, and I'm like, the McLean card cinched it. The verbiage is just too good. You kind of have to tip your hat to it. It just says that like there's a power vacuum. That if the U.S. does it, that they're just going to be looking for they're going to be looking for subordinates and not equal partners. They're looking for junior partners. The McLean card says that there's a vacuum and that the EU kind of jumping into that role independently. I don't even think you need to win time frame. I think you just need to be in like whose initiation. I think you probably gave it a little bit more than you needed, but you got it done. In terms of the permutation, I think the permutation is right. I think you could do both, and I mean, there's probably a way you could write perm do both to kind of be like, I don't know, it would have a whole lot of intrinsic parts to it, but like it would somehow work. Like definitely the perm, you can do perm do both, but whether or not it eats this sort of leadership role question is something to debate it in and of itself. So the next question then is the question of solvency deficits. The problem is that the NATO thing just is game over. If they win that NATO is part of this and the US eventually follows on, which you have no say, no deficit to at all in this debate, it's irrelevant. Every card you read in the 1AC, every card you read in the 1AC, it just assumes NATO doing this is good, NATO having this is good, NATO's good, blah, 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 blah. And I get your argument that like the US needs to, obviously be a part of this. However, I think they're blatantly asserting the question of like whether or not the US will follow on. They probably would, I guess they wouldn't. I think that you need to incorporate the Albin evidence from I think it's Albin, the solvency, because all the ideas that they base their INW on are like US ideas of how to respond to this. So I think that could probably give you some ammunition for say yes in the future. That basically the counterplan would just effectively be the EU just stealing already pre-existing US ideas. So I think there's a way to re-highlight that card to give you sort of some grease on the treads for say yes. But they didn't really have any pushback on it. And so to that extent, I don't think there's an NC3 deficit. I don't think there's a miscalc deficit because everything's just based on NATO. The way the counterplan text is written, it would include NATO and NATO would say yes, and ergo the United States would say yes. At some point, for some reason, I was like, I think it was when I was on my way to the bathroom, I'm like, wait a minute. It's just the US, and that means no Britain, so there's a solvency deficit. But then I looked at the counterplan text and I came back and it was NATO. So I thought it was just like, we asked the US to follow on, but whatever. Okay, so to that end, there's no solvency deficit. The next question then is spillover. Spillover effects being the second line of the card probably dooms your statement of them saying that there's no claim for spillover. I mean, the card just flat out says it. I think this is one of those times, again, you just need to tip your hat to the evidence. It's there. It says what you want it to say. I know it's tough for you to tip your hat. Anyway, the cards are there. They say what they're supposed to say. And in a world where there isn't any evidence to attack otherwise, I'm just giving them some risk of the internal net benefit. The cheatiness of this counterplan gets them a say yes warrant to, NATO and US following on, which means they solve all the out. Questions? Okay. Yes, I thought it was the right 2-minute. I know that's probably the first question we're thinking of. I think you had two choices. I think you were decently along in the other kind of the pick as well. I think that was a winning 2-NR. I think you got the 1AR you wanted out of them. Spent a lot of time on the framework on the security K. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you have for questions? Other than your hunger. Can we go eat? Is that like your next question? And I'm cool with that. If you guys if we want to go downstairs and eat and you can ask questions while reading, we can do that too. So.
I don't know, I just have a question. Sarah, on the pick, what were your thoughts on permanent counterplan?
So here's the thing. In the 3 tournaments now that I've 4 tournaments now I've been judging, I keep hearing picks, and I'm just of the mind, and I think we should just all, because there's just a good chance I'm going to judge all 4 of you again at some point. And for posterity, I think country picks are okay. Because if you do it the other way and say no country picks, that means that they can topically just do bilateral NATO functions with any country that they want, and that's not the topic we want. And yeah, so you put away your sword when I put away my sword, I guess is the way to look at it. But I think they're okay. I know there's definitions both way, but in a world where there's just no effing good on this topic, like it's like last year, I like had to throw away all my curmudgeonliness about process counter plans because there was just like no possibility that the neg would have any ground if we didn't have these things. So
I gotta vote for the ag topic.
yeah, good idea. So anyway, yeah, so that's where I'm at, and I think for both of you, that's just good to know too that I'm okay with country picks in the long term. So if you get me
Is this like something undebatable for you? Like if we answer
no, it's not undebatable. It's not like, oh, I'm just not going to listen to it. I'm just saying, like, in a round where you're debating, you know, them, it's probably you're fighting an uphill battle. You can win these things, but it's like every judge, regardless of what they try and tell you, every judge has a preconceived notion about something, unless you're just completely tabula rasa like I am about a lot of critiques, because I just literally don't know anything about them. That said, like, if we have preconceived notions, then we have to open ourselves up to what works and what doesn't. And if you find a way, and I'm judging you, and you're like, I've got this great arg about limits or fairness or whatever, or counterinterpretation that works or something, hey, good on you. I'm willing to listen to it. It's just I haven't heard the argument yet. And just at kind of a basic level of where the topic is at this point, I'm willing to say that they're okay, because I don't want to see bilateral Fs.
Yeah. What do you think is the best 2A arguments of pick then, if not the like what do you think?
I think that affirmatives need to just go through and figure out why their country is key. And it is a problem with your affirmative, I'll admit. Like, it's not like, because I did some work on your app over the weekend and I mean, you have to defend everybody's key, but I mean, I think that I don't know. And I honestly don't want to tell you too much more of what I'm thinking, because there's a chance you might debate Nutra at some point. So, yeah.
But you just think like substance is the best 2A argument?
Yes, I do. I don't. For me, and plus I'm just an ass theory judge. I'll just admit it. I'm just not a good theory judge. So.
For this, if they had gone for the Croatia pick, I would have gone for the same solvency deficits, and the argument would have been in Crossix they conceded they were bilateral agreements, which means they don't access the NATO framework. Do you think that makes sense to us?
They do access the NATO. Oh no, that's the other counterplay.
Yeah,
oh yeah,
okay.
that's actually a legit argument. I know. Good job though. 3-3. Way to go. So yeah, that's where. But yeah, substance is the way to go. I mean, there's probably a Balkans key thing. I mean, I don't know. They're spoofing. The Russians are spoofing a lot in the Balkans right now with a lot of disinformation campaigns. Like, they're messing around. So you might have there's a reason why it's key. Obviously, there's not a lot of NC3 rationales down there, but like, there might be a miscalc scenario to be had. I don't know. Maybe. Let the lit verify.